Sherry, do you want to do that?
Sure. Committee member Foldenauer?
Here.
Committee member Olson?
Here.
Committee member Ray Dupree?
Here.
Committee member Schiller?
Here.
Committee member Spink?
Here.
Vice Chair White?
Here.
And for the record, Mario Rendon, our chair, is absent and excused. We have a quorum.
Thank you for doing that. We're going to just do a quick review of the agenda for this evening. We're going to do some administrative items and talk about the
recording in progress
calendar, which has been updated. We're going to talk about the use of non-motorized vehicles off the public highways on city-owned trails, which I've seen a bunch of talk on social media about, so that should be interesting. We're going to talk about Poplar Street traffic calming and safety project update from Jonathan Wu, and lastly, the PC Bikeway North and crossing improvements, which I assume is you, Maz, on that. And then with that, I hope everybody had the opportunity to look at the previous meeting notes. Can I have a motion to approve those meeting notes?
So moved.
Moved by
Janet.
Janet. Can we take a vote on that? All in favor, say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Meeting minutes from 1/13/22 are approved. I guess we can start off with the calendar update. Is that Sherry or Maz, where some dates moved around?
We just had one date that was corrected from May 6th, which was a Friday, to May 5th, which was a Thursday.
Okay. Do we need to do anything with that, approve it, or just acknowledge it?
I think an acknowledgement would be fine.
All right, well, we acknowledge that. Are there any problems with that from anybody? I'll take that as a no. And with that, we'll move on to the use of non-motorized vehicles off of the, do we need to do public comment now? Yeah.
We should.
Yes, we have
definitely do that.
I saw some people in there. I don't have control of that. Is that something you can do, Sherry?
Yes, we have 4 attendees, and if you're an attendee, if you could raise your hand if you want to speak at this time on any items that are not on the agenda. So nobody, I guess they're here to listen.
I see. Okay, yeah, I saw some chat, but it looks like we are good. Hi, John. So we'll move on to the use of non-motorized vehicles off of public highways on city-owned trails. Do we have a presentation for that, Jonathan? There we go.
Sorry about that. I had to unmute. Yeah, so I have just a quick little presentation for you guys. Hello, everybody. Committee members and attending public. I'm Jonathan Wu, the Assistant Engineer for the City of Half Moon Bay. And today I'll be talking to you guys about non-motorized vehicles on paths and trails, particularly off-street. So going on. Now, there's a few types of non-motorized vehicles that we kind of looked up into. And they're kind of listed and shown on your screen at the moment. There's electrical bicycles. We'll refer to them as e-bikes at the moment. Electrical mountain bikes, also referred to as EMTBs, motorized scooters, motorized boards, and segways. Oops, sorry. So we have a few locations here that we're kind of talking about throughout the city, some trails around the city, and a few locations that we want to kind of allow these motorized vehicle, non-motorized vehicles, my apologies, are the Naomi Patches Trail, California Coastal Trail, as well as the East Side Parallel Trail. And you can kind of see them approximate location on the map with within the city's jurisdiction. There's also a few other locations that I didn't mention, but they're just kind of minor areas, like the trail from Highway 92 to Strawfowler and the Pilarcitos neighborhood, as well as a future trail to the Johnston House further down the line. Now, kind of talking about e-bikes here, just a little briefly. A few years ago, they're actually not determined as motorized vehicles, according to state legislature. And there's a few differences between the class 1, class 2, and class 3 bikes that they mention. So the class 1 bike is basically a low speed pedal assisted bicycle with an electric motor, and it basically aids while pedaling, but it goes only up to 20 miles per hour. And similar as class 2, it will go up to 20 miles per hour, but it also has a low speed throttle assisted bike. But the difference between those and class 3 is that it can class 3 can go up to 28 miles per hour. And I kind of looked through Google and took a few pictures or a few screenshots of what a class 1, class 2, class 3 bike looks like. And they're pretty similar. The only difference that you can find around, Google is basically just the manufacturer. That's the only difference that we can really physically see. And also kind of talking about electric mountain bikes as EMTBs, they're generally classified as a class 1. Now, current city municipal code basically specifies the use of vehicles off the public. It's the use of all vehicles off public highways and streets. And these such vehicles are basically defined as motor vehicles, motorcycles, mini bikes, dirt bikes, dune buggies, and any motor driven cycle or vehicle. But kind of like what I mentioned earlier, e-bikes are not considered a motorized vehicle anymore. So kind of going on, we're kind of looking at a few California vehicle codes and kind of referencing their sections. And interestingly, that first section 21207.5 on your screen, the second bullet point, basically prohibits the use of class 3 e-bikes on trails and paths, unless the public agency chooses to permit them. But it also provides that a public agency may prohibit class 1 and class 2 e-bikes on trails as well within the agency's jurisdiction. So there's a little bit of flexibility that the state gives us there. And California Vehicle Code section 21230 states that a motorized scooter may be operated on a bicycle path or trail. Again, unless the local agency order prohibits this operation by ordinance. But we kind of did some research and we didn't really find too much about electrical personnel assisted mobility devices, which is it's kind of like the fancier term for segways, or the legal term for segways, as well as motorized boards. So we didn't have much information on those. Now we're kind of getting to the policy recommendations here. So we kind of recommend that the committee affirms the following policy recommendations to: 1, allow class 1 and class 2 e-bikes on the paths and trails, and 2, prohibit class 3 e-bikes on all paths and trails. 3, allow electric scooters and segways on all paved paths and trails. 4, prohibit the use of gasoline powered scooters on all paths and trails. And 5, prohibit the use of motorized boards on all paths and trails as well. And something to note, the 2 asterisks on number 1 and 2, it would basically be consistent with what the state parks have along the coastal trail as well. And one more thing to note is that this would currently apply to California Coastal Trail, Naomi Patches Trail, and the Eastside Parallel Trail, as well as those other miniature trails that I kind of mentioned earlier in the presentation. And I believe that's pretty much it. And I provided John Dowdy, the Public Works Director's contact information, Mazier Brozaginia's, the city engineer, his information, as well as my information in addition to that. So I am open to answer any questions that the public or the committee may have.
Just to be clear, do you need a vote from the committee tonight on or affirm your recommendation effectively? Or alter it if
I think we'd like to, have a discussion about the policy, any clarifying questions, as well as, if this is a policy that looks like it's reflective of the concerns and comments of the committee and the public, then if there's an affirmation of it, we could move this to the next level as well.
Our intention, John Dowdy here, our intention is to push this or an ordinance through to the council in the next few months that reflect, the changes. But our purpose tonight is to find out whether our recommended sort of policy perspective, which will be reflected in the ordinance, can be indicated at the council that you supported this action. And if not, what it is, then, and if there's, again, questions or clarifications you need, but, this is part of the process of vetting.
I appreciate that. Well, I'll open whoever, does anybody have any comments on this to kick off the discussion?
I do think that you're going to get a lot of kickback on the prohibiting the use of motorized boards. I see them every day when I'm out there on the trails. Can you help me understand the thinking behind that particular prohibition?
I'll jump in. I don't think it's fair because I was working on the ordinance. This is a start, and I was just actually talking to the community development director, and she was asking me what we were recommending, and we both landed at the same point. We're likely to get pushback on the boards, but we also see the problems and issues kind of related to them, which is that one is they're far wider than most things and deal with it. So they do create an issue in terms of clearances around folks that are biking, walking, strollers, any number of things, wheelchairs, segways, whatever it is to deal with that. Segways are a really weird issue, but I don't think there's not many out there, and I think they're a thing of the past, frankly. But the problem we're having in part with them is that they go all over the place. You've got the hoverboards, with the two wheels on the sides, and you ride. You've got, I think we've all seen these gas-powered skateboards that'll run 25, 30 miles an hour. So, so those are all the challenges with it. What I would say is that I did, when I was looking at these and kind of formulating this, I did ponder allowing the motorized boards, or at least the non-gas ones, on the Naomi Patridge Trail, and saying, okay, let's allow them on the Naomi Patridge Trail and perhaps the East Side Parallel Trail, but leaving them off of the Coastal Trail, where I think we have a lot of walkers and a lot of folks in a different and a much more recreationalist on that. And that's something that certainly we would welcome, a thought process on whether that answers to that point. Frankly, in the end, this may be one of those issues that the council has to ultimately decide where they land on the darn things.
Yeah, no, I get it. I'm not advocating one way or the other.
No, I know you're not. We struggled with it, and it's start here and we go from there and see how much noise is made.
Yeah.
There's a level of enforcement. We all know that. One of the reasons Jonathan showed the 1, 2, and 3s, the pictures, is that I'll point it out if you look at them. If you're sheriff's officer, somebody that's in enforcement, it's very hard to distinguish between these unless they're going 28 miles an hour. you probably can tell the difference between 20 and 28 miles an hour, but whether you can really tell the difference between 20 and 22 or 23. So part of the reason for putting that was to say enforcement on this is just difficult at best. We will certainly sign around if the ordinance ultimately gets approved. We think it makes sense to not have the class 3 on them. They should be on the street. They're basically, kind of a lighter version of moped, which are all required to be on the street. So I'm not sure that there's really a distinction between your typical mopeds and a class 3, at least in speed. There's certainly not. But that was a point of reference for that deal, is to say this is a tough enforcement issue, and out there.
Is there an existing speed limit on any of our paths?
There is not.
Okay.
And that's something that we have talked about with the BPAC. I think it's something that we can come back to. But again, posting and dealing with that is one issue. Enforcement is another issue. What we've talked about, and Maz and I have committed to coming back to you with that. And when we talk about the CIP, I think there's sort of some of that's a conversation in there, is looking at but you can see the chat there with Michelle. But for the most part, the section, I don't believe there's speed limit posted on the section that most people think of in the city, which is from Kelly to Seymour Bridge.
Yeah.
Regardless of that, it's an issue of enforcement, and no one is out there with a speed gun enforcing it. What we think probably makes most sense in some of those areas is a feedback type radar sign that shows people what they are. And frankly, we can then establish, if we want to establish a speed, and identify what that is. So at least people have that immediate feedback that says, oh, I'm maybe going too fast. With that, I'm going faster than I should really with this deal, whether you're motor assisted or not.
Yeah.
With it, because let's face it, I think we've all seen folks without assist or without motors going probably 20 plus miles an hour on the trail, which can be, I think, hazardous under certain conditions. And I think the BPAC previously has said that very thing.
Okay, thank you.
So I would just like to say that I do like the idea of being consistent and not allowing the class 3. I also think I think it's a good idea to post the speed limits, especially as the speeds are getting faster. And I think the feedback signs are a great way to do that.
I will jump in and say my initial reaction is 20 miles an hour is really fast for a trail, especially in general. Some people riding those bikes are new to riding bikes or not as experienced. The bike's a little heavier. It's not as agile. My initial reaction is category 2 bikes feel like mopeds to me, or mini bikes. I think this whole thing of saying that because something doesn't have gas, doesn't have a motor, that would be like saying a Tesla isn't a car anymore because it doesn't have a gasoline engine.
But it has an electric motor. Yeah.
So is my car not a car anymore? So can I get out of putting a license plate on it? Because if we could advocate for that for tonight, I could save a lot of money at the DMV. I'm halfway joking, but I'm just giving my initial reaction. The class 1 I could live with. I think that I was wondering how we would even enforce it, which several people brought up. And then how would we do that? How would you? And it is written on the bike. I'm pretty sure that it's on the main. Just like most bikes have that on the main stem. The main.
It's required by state law now to be identified, at least on the label point,
right,
or somewhere it's required to be identified.
So you could stop them. The question is, who's going to stop them, and how's that going to work? I get all that. I ride the trail sometimes. I don't ride it as much anymore, candidly, because when there's so many people there, the people are as inexperienced especially when we have tourists here. The people are as inexperienced walking on the trail with bikers that makes it dangerous, especially when they have dogs and they let the dog go across with the leash. And now all of a sudden you're in a bad situation. So the board issue, I think is tough because I think boards expanded into all these board vehicles. I see people walking their dogs on with the one wheel boards. So I feel for them as a person who has dogs and does that and knows that some dogs like exercise, but some of those motorized boards are fast. I did hear some or read some stuff on social media about this that was posted on Instagram, and it felt like people didn't want motorized or anything with a motor on there. But if you don't show up to the meeting and let us know, it's hard to get that feedback. So those are just my initial reaction. I do like being consistent. And if we were going to put a speed limit, I think you'd have to put a feedback thing, because those are proven to work better than probably, I mean, who even enforces this? Is this like a police thing, or who would even be there to do that?
At this point, the only designated, individuals would be sheriff's officers. Now, you could have state parks. The state parks rangers have the authority. They are peace officers, so they have the status to do that. And most of the county rangers and even Mid-Peninsula open space rangers are also peace officers. And technically, because this is a municipal code issue and on private property, public lands, but private property, not on a public street, technically we could delegate to like our code enforcement person or whatever to do that, or to a city ranger or whatever with this. There are authorities to do so, but at this point, we don't have any ranger program. What you're looking at is basically the sheriff's office doing that. And that's why I wanted to be very, we want to be very clear up front. This is not going to be a high priority in terms of enforcement. It's why I struggle with the speed limit. I think the feedback signs are fine, but expecting that anybody's truly going to enforce is not real likely, unless and until we have a real problem out there with multiples and we kind of put out an enforcement action like you see sometimes at folks running stop signs and speeding through, and we have a major enforcement action and catch a bunch of people all in one shot going in downtown or wherever they are. So it's out there. The one thing I wanted to clarify is that if we put a speed and we establish a formal speed limit out there on this, that would be for all vehicles, not just the motorized one, but it'd be for all vehicles, bicycles or otherwise. And I do want to say, in terms of the class 1 and 2, it's the state who basically said that the 2s are not a moped and everything with that deal, and that they classified the e-bikes differently than the gasoline mopeds and everything with that deal. So that's an interesting issue. I grew up as a kid having a moped, and I could ride on the street at 16 and all that good stuff. But anyway, that I just want to be clear in terms of what that means, and we don't really have a magic number on that with it, but we would definitely want to talk to state parks and everybody to get a consistent speed limit agreed upon by everybody, and deal with that, and the county as well.
I also wanted to offer a point of clarification about e-bikes. If it says there's a 20-mile-per-hour limit on the bike, that's only for the assistance on the bike. So if you're pedal assisting or using the throttle, it'll cut off at 20 miles per hour. And actually getting up to 20 miles per hour is difficult, even on the turbo setting. So usually I'm usually cruising around 15 miles per hour on my category 1. On throttles, I'm sure it's a little bit easier because you just, push the lever a little harder. And I understand the hesitance to allow class 3s on the trails, because you can push it using a throttle up to 28 miles per hour, and that's a problem. So just clarifying all of that.
Yeah. And I did want to say this in terms of the scooters between 3 and 4. Frankly, that was more of an issue toward the city's sustainability efforts, not really anything else. Although I would say the gasoline-powered scooters typically will go faster and don't have the governors and everything, and they do have a noise factor with them, but that was primarily geared toward more of a sustainability between the E and the electric versus the gasoline. But also there were some concerns about those that and not being really having governors. So in any event, just to clarify the difference between the gasoline in that respect.
I'm don't totally understand allowing electric scooters but prohibiting motorized boards. I know like the difference, but I have trouble. I would assume a motorized board is slower than an electric scooter. Maybe I'm wrong. Could you speak to that?
I don't think that I think you could. I think you can have the both go faster than the other. I don't think it's fully a matter of speed with that. It's part of it is just their profile is different. And there are so many versions of it that it was, from a regulatory perspective, easier to just make a blanket broad brush statement rather than try to distinguish between a 2-wheel, a 4-wheel, speed. How much could they go? The state made that very easy when they, fairly easy, at least in terms of distinguishing between class 1, 2, and 3, and required each of them to have a manufacturer's stamp and identification of what they are. So you can figure out what they are in that deal. The scooters are limited in speed as well. And also the state acknowledged that electric scooters basically are allowed on paved paths and segways the same. They have not responded in kind with the motorized boards because this is really an evolved item with that. So again, there is no magic to this, and the simple answer tonight could be is that you just don't really want to take a position on the motorized boards, or you want to take a position to say, I don't think we should prohibit them. With that, ultimately, the city council will have to weigh in, and it will be noticed publicly and out as well, and the community will weigh in terms of those things, and we'll give a chance for folks to respond to it. But that was why. Different profile, not managed and controlled by the state really under the vehicle code. So they're just sort of everything and anything possible out there in the marketplace for these things.
And then I know previously it was brought up that between Poplar and Kelly, the trail is going to be changed or updated to have different lanes for horses, cyclists, and pedestrians. Mm-hmm. Perhaps some of the speed issues can be addressed in a new the terrain, either speed bumps or actually gravel tends to be quite good at keeping speeds down. Maybe people may not enjoy riding it as much, but I think there's a discussion on the type of terrain facilitating the type of speeds we'd like people to be riding at.
Sure. Right now, with the Poplar Gateways plan, it is we're in the process of doing the environmental impact report. That plan basically looks at both options, including the paved bicycle piece as well as decomposed granite. But I will tell you this, the takeaway from the community has been primarily that they believe that the bike should remain a paved AC path, and that separating actually between the bike and the pedestrian, which would be under that scenario, decomposed granite, is what I think most people feel would be the proper thing to do in terms of safety and issues with that deal. But that still remains a question, and that also remains probably something that is 6, 8, 10 years in the future in terms of that separated piece of that. And then that only theoretically covers a relatively small portion of the coastal trail. So you still have this issue extending north and extending south from that segment that would be the split trail. So.
Thank you.
I think there is community desire for community input. Is that true, Maz?
We have a hand up. Michelle's up, and then Andrew Turner had a comment. I just responded in the chat, but Andrew, if you want to voice your opinion, please raise your hand again. We do have Michelle hand raised.
Okay, I'm going to allow Michelle to talk. Is that okay? I'll click the button. There you go, Michelle. Welcome. She's going to unmute.
Hi. I was in the BPAC for 4 years, and I've got about 60,000 miles on the coastal trail. And I don't think it's about the kind of bike. It's about the person that's on top of the seat on the bike. It's as simple as that. You're never going to enforce this. There's no budget for it. And the inconsistency of the coastal trails jurisdictions between Half Moon Bay, which is only popular to Kelly. After Kelly, you don't have any jurisdiction. What would be nice is to have a coastal trail commission that actually joins all the jurisdictions.
We can't hear you, Michelle.
And us. I think that the speed limit should be less than 15 miles an hour. I mean, I have a class 3 bike, I have a class 2 bike, and I have an analog bike. But I find that people on road bikes will often go, 15 to 20 miles an hour, and they'll weave in between people because they're so agile, which I don't think it feels really good to the pedestrians. So I think the coastal trails become more of a pedestrian trail than a bicycle trail. I'd like to see 10 miles per hour as somebody who rides a 28-mile-an-hour bike. The only reason why I have that fast bike is for Capistrano and Main Street and Kelly, so I can ride in the middle of the street and maintain, a speed that doesn't, make the car drivers angry. Other than that, on the coastal trail, I usually am under 10 miles per hour. And so I just wanted to put that out there that I think, legislating or, creating a policy or a rule or whatever you want to call it without any kind of money to fund the actual, support of this idea is kind of fruitless. And I don't think signage is going to work in terms of large signs. I think if you were to put, and this is something I suggested when I was on the BPAC, if you put like little iconographic spray painted things on the coastal trail where you're already looking down, you're on your bike, they're nudges. I mean, there's this whole area of science called behavioral economics, and this is classic. How do you get people to just nudge them into a little slightly better awareness? I think that's all you got. You can nudge into awareness, but you can adopt this, but it's never going to be enforced. And I'd like to see somebody give me a ticket on my bike.
I think those are all valid points that sort of make me rethink everything, mainly because, Michelle, you make great points. And I would even go further and say, while we suggest what the speed limit is, we go back to there's no money, there's no enforcement. Doesn't mean we don't do anything. I'm not saying that we go back into Mad Max here. I'm just saying if there's no money and no enforcement, should we have a lot of debate about this? Anything from the types of bikes, boards that are out there and the speed limit, and say, let's try to be consistent at least, so that if a commission or if enforcement happens, that they're not looking at a map to figure out what portion of the coastal trail can have a class 3 electric board or this or that. And at least there's some consistency so that if there is money in enforcement, and maybe that group that was getting together that was going to roam the trail at some point, I know it's still getting traction and it needs to get people and things like that, but at least there's a standard at that point. I'm not saying that standard, we should just roll over and not talk about it, but I think moving out of consistency will create more problems than anything. Like somebody can ride this here and not there. And even though this is about jurisdiction, we're all a community here. It's really the coast and the whole coast. So if we could be unified on that, and that would, being honest, would go against probably, if we were going to debate it, what I would go against, because a motored thing to me is a motored thing, like my electric car is a car. But it seems like that's not where we're going to go. And class 1 and class 2 bikes are already allowed on these other places. So,
and if I could remind you, class 3 is not allowed on state parks and it's not allowed in the county right now, as far as the research that we've done.
But nobody knows. But
whether we like it or not, or agree with it or not, or whatever, that there, in terms of consistency, all we're trying to suggest is we be consistent with that. I will also say only this: most laws are made for the 2 to 3% of the people who blatantly disregard the law and put people in danger. And that's why most laws are made, and that's why most laws are enforced with that deal. So do I like that? No. But the bottom line is that at the same time, somebody behaving badly, people are also screaming because they want us to do something about it. And just because someone isn't regularly enforcing doesn't mean that in being able to enforce isn't an important thing to have in your toolbox. But anyway.
Okay.
FYI, the national parks ban throttle bikes. So class 2 and class 3 are banned from the national parks.
We do have one more public comment.
Yes, I'll move that attendee over. This is Rick Barker.
Good evening. All right, can you all hear me?
Yes.
Excellent. Okay. Michelle had great points on a lot of her points. I just want to echo that. And I believe that the spray painting of the slogans or the speed limit, if we're not going to have any enforcement, it's really just creates animosity. When there's a 10-mile-an-hour limit and someone feels that someone went past them faster than that, they're going to be upset about that. I think if we create a culture of, be nice, say hi, or something, pass with care, that sort of thing, really, slow down, enjoy the view, that sort of thing would really go a long way. Draconian, implementation. There are people that are going to always be in a hurry and they're always going to be there. But I think once the multimodal trail or the bypass trail or whatever we're calling it, that would, I think, alleviate a lot of the people that are in a hurry. I am an avid cyclist myself, and I won't ride the coastal trail because on a road bike, I can maintain speeds the entire distance over 20 miles an hour. And it's just not safe for the dogs, strollers, or what have you. Unless I have my kids with me, then I take the coast trail. Another mention of form factor of the wheels, whatever the size, whatever they're strapped to. Somebody on a penny farthing when they first saw a safety bicycle thought it was crazy. So whether it's an electric skateboard or a Segway or a one wheel, I don't really think we should be discriminating against form factors. Speed limit should cover all of that, and then try to generate a general culture around passing with care. But with that, there's a lot of animosity from the cycling community. They get frustrated with the oblivious pedestrians, and they're walking 5 deep, they're taking selfies, and it needs to go both ways. If there's going to be signage, you can't just target one demographic. That's it. Thank you.
And there also should be some effort to discourage the use of noise canceling headphones when you're walking or biking or, walking your dog, or when you're on the path, take off the headphones or at least eliminate the noise canceling so that you can hear somebody coming up behind you saying, on your left, hello, I'm here. So we need to find a way to support that community spirit.
I wanted, if I could just remind folks that we are looking at this to apply to all segments of the future of the coastal trail, which would include CLT trail, which is the DG trail to the north, their proposed extension. But also I want to point out that this would all run along the city's portion of the coastal trail that runs from basically the Redondo Beach Road out to the through the golf course to the end of the world out there, the ranch. So these would apply to those same trails and paths, and certainly there are some narrower pieces to that. But just we always get focused on and sort of Poplar on up to Princeton Harbor really with it, but I won't. We also have to be concerned and issued about those things with that deal. And I think the same issues are prevalent up there, just fewer people, perhaps at times, but same issues between people not paying attention as walkers, bicyclists probably going faster than they should at times, and a whole array of, of behavior issues. But those are areas that we have to look at marking and reacting and responding to as well.
Does anybody else have any comments? Could we get around supporting the city's recommendation as it stands currently?
I have comments in chat that I can read for the public record if you'd like. And I think you can see them as panelists, but these are for anybody who's viewing on PCT. Should I go ahead?
Yes, please, Sherry.
Okay. One is from Andrew. He's an El Granada citizen, and he just wanted to say that he and his family and friends all want class 1, 2, and 3 and all other bikes to be allowed on all the trails. Commented that don't prohibit anything and create more bureaucracy. Okay, and Brandon, different Brandon, attendee Brandon noted that it'd be nice if there was signage that indicates a keep right pass on the left mentality. Share the trail, keep right, pass on left. He's also from El Granada. And those are the 2 comments in chat.
Thanks for reading those.
Mm-hmm.
Anybody else? Aaron, Matthew, any comments?
Yeah, I think the feedback from the public has been good. I do like the idea of a speed limit. If you're on a class 3 bike and you're going an appropriate speed, I don't see a problem with that. And just sort of nudging people to sort of be respectful, because it is a point, on the coastal trail, when I think about it, I feel like on a Saturday, I'm more likely to have an issue with a pedestrian than someone on a bike, someone just sort of roaming around all over while you're trying to get by. I think one other thing that has been mentioned that is, I was just curious if the city or the sheriffs have been receiving any if there's been any incidents filed or any formal complaints that have been made by people on the trail in general related to anything.
I'm not aware of any. We can certainly reach out to the sheriff's office, but I can say I'm not aware of any at this moment in time. I think, but we can inquire and certainly feed back to you.
Likewise, I think the speed limit is a better solution. I think I'm on the coastal trail on a regular basis, and I usually, it seems to be there's more problems with just with people with like road bicycles going really fast, not electric, and then weaving in between people, or even with people walking their dogs and then like the leash being strung across the trail like a tripwire. I think electric bikes really are a very minor problem, and I think just having a speed limit would completely suffice.
So if I were to summarize, would we feel comfortable supporting the city's recommendation in addition to suggesting that a speed limit be established at least, and maybe it's not 20. I don't know if it's 10, but maybe 15 miles an hour. Because I see some people shaking their heads. Eric, you tend to agree, Matthew? Aaron, yes. Eric?
What was the public input on the class 3? Did like all colors?
Well, I think the overall was that some people said we want all 3. The fact is wouldn't be consistent.
Okay.
Would only be short portions of what we control. And if we're trying to be consistent, I'm not commenting that they should or shouldn't. I'm just saying the reality is that making things inconsistent will create more problems if and when we're even able to enforce it.
I see. Okay.
Is that you agree?
I wouldn't ban the motorized boards. Aside from that, I'm in agreement.
I don't know for John, you and Maz, we can vote. I think in general, we are generally supportive, maybe other than the board issue.
Chair, I think what we're really looking for is some consensus on it. And we got that.
Okay.
I think we're comfortable conveying the comments and the concerns related to the boards and letting the council kind of shake through what they want to do with that. I appreciate those comments, and truly it wasn't taken lightly when we were looking at it and trying to figure out what to do with them. And you got to kind of start one way or the other. So I think it's adequate what we got tonight. I think it was a very good conversation. I think the public comment was important, and your kind of consensus is consistent with what we had heard from the BPAC in prior meetings for the most part. So it's been fairly consistent. So that's adequate for us.
I think this is super. I think this is a hard issue. I mean, you've got bikes that don't have stickers on the side other than stopping them. We don't have budget to have traffic cops on the coastal trail. So I just want to acknowledge it's a tough issue, and at least in my, I hope, considered relatively short lifetime, getting complete consensus from everyone is really hard. And there's always going to be people who are going to be upset. And that's not the intent. I'm not trying to pick on anybody. I think we're generally just trying to say we all share the coastal trail. We'd all like to enjoy it in our own way, whatever that is. And we're just trying to look out for the greater good of everybody's safety generally. So I appreciate everybody's participation, and thanks. You can take that forward. And I think the speed limit definitely, though, would be something we would say, I'm not saying we spend money on the feedback thing. That's a whole nother issue. How much does that cost and things? But, using behavioral economics does work, with things painted. And I know that still costs money, but just little things like that is what would be our guidance.
Maz will talk to you more about the capital program. And I think some of those things are already started to be distilled into that. We're going to be looking at doing a repaving project, which we could do some work. We've, so all of the things that you're suggesting, I do think that we need to look at what the speed limit makes sense, and whether to be enforceable, we have to go through a process like we do for any public street. I don't know, or whether we just arbitrarily pick a number, with that, and not arbitrarily, but is it 10, 15? I think everybody agreed that it should be somewhere, around 10 to 15. So we'll have to look at what the legal issues are in terms of enforcement of that, because once you post it, if you're going to post the speed limit, you have to have a basis for having posted that speed limit. And that said, the feedback points are also with what we're going to do with the state parks. So we need to work and collaborate with state parks and the county to try to get a consistent approach to this as well, we think. Thank you. I appreciate that. I think, Jonathan, great job pulling that together. Thanks.
Yeah, thanks, Jonathan, for doing that. I don't think you get off the hook, because I think we were talking about Poplar Street Traffic Calming and Safety Project, which you have another update for us.
Yeah. Oh,
I'm gonna say I wanted to stick around for this one because I'd started the mess, and I kind of wanted to help through it. But I'm going to say adios tonight and leave you in the good hands of Maz and Jonathan. And thank you for your service and being here. I really appreciate it as well.
Appreciate you, John.
See ya.
Jonathan, it's all you, man.
Thank you very much, Chair White. So back in November of 2021, we presented the Poplar Street Traffic Calming and Safety Project, the BPAC committee. So I don't have a presentation per se or anything really to share with you guys, but it's just more so of an update of what has happened between that point until now. So after that meeting, we took everybody's comments into consideration, definitely, and we try to accommodate as much as we possibly can. So we updated those plans, went to the Planning Commission on December 14th of 2021 to seek approval for a coastal development permit. We received a lot of great feedback from both commissioners and the attending public at that meeting. A lot of concerns, but eventually it did go to a continuation of that item and that project to a later date that was set on February 8th. So from December all the way to February, we again took all those comments that we received from the Planning Commission and pretty much updated the plan set, went back to the Planning Commission on the 8th of February of 2022. And ultimately we got it approved, and right now it's just going through our design process again, because we also did receive even more comments and more conditions from that. So I'm here to kind of tell you again what those updates are based off of the Planning Commission comments and conditions of approval. So one thing that we did present on the north side, first I'm going to talk about the west side of Highway 1. So on the north side, we basically said it's going to be all sidewalk with curb and gutter, with a little bit DG around the cypress trees just to kind of work around it. On the south side, it's going to be mainly DG with landscaping. That's what I brought to you guys on November 3rd, I think it was the date. I can't remember the exact date, but it was in November of 2021 with a bunch of concrete pads for each concrete driveway for their respective property. And that was just on the south side. But on the east side of Highway 1, both the north and south side of Poplar Street were just all sidewalk with additional tree wells to accommodate some landscaping. So that has changed since then. And those changes include west of Highway 1 again, both sides of Poplar, the north and south side. What we're going to do is utilize as much permeable softscape surfaces that we have to date and not pave over them, but utilize them as the parking areas. So kind of similar to what there is right now, is just utilizing the existing softscape as parking for those residents. On the east side of Highway 1, going back to the west side, and it's also a similar case about north side with concrete, south side with DG mostly. I'll talk about the concrete pads or the driveway aprons in just a little bit, but kind of going to the east side of Poplar Street, similar case to what I said about the west side is that the south side of Poplar Street, we're going to do DG again, and the north side is concrete. So pretty much the entire stretch along Poplar Street, you get a nice concrete pathway on top, nice concrete sidewalk on top for ADA accessibility. And on the south side, you get a nice DG pathway all along that corridor. One thing about that is we need to ensure that we're going to maintain the concrete as 5 feet wide, but the DG path is going to be maintained as 6 foot minimum as much as we possibly can throughout the entire stretch. Of course, there are going to be some areas where we might not be able to just because of existing trees in the area, but we're definitely going to do our best to try to maintain a 6 foot path, 6 foot decomposed granite path on the south side and a 5 foot sidewalk on the north side. A couple of other additions is that we're going to try to implement as many bioretention areas that we possibly can along the entire stretch, as well as not, reducing parking, just because we want to maintain parking for those residents, as well as for the California Coastal Commission. And we also are going to implement some bulb outs between 3rd Avenue and Highway 1. Our initial plan was to not do that just because there's existing sidewalk there with pavement, but we're going to implement those changes as well. Earlier, I kind of mentioned that I was going to talk to you later about the concrete pads along the entire stretch, but now it's kind of going to get through that. So the concrete pad, we have this quote unquote clause in a sense. So on the south side specifically, where I mentioned that there's going to be DG all along the path, all along the project corridor, we're going to start with DG, and each property owner has the ability to opt in to having a concrete driveway. If they have a concrete driveway, they pretty much won't be liable for maintenance, but if they want to have a DG pathway, we would ask them to sign an agreement that states that they will maintain that portion, because there's a lot of vehicle load that will travel over that, which will cause possible rutting, possible damage issues to that DG path, which would then cause ADA inaccessibility. And that's the main purpose of this project, is to maintain ADA accessible pathways. That is pretty much it. We also mentioned, kind of provided the fact about traffic circles. Nothing really too new there. Only new thing is that we're just going to utilize low maintenance and low profile landscaping, mainly because we want to maintain adequate site distance and site visibility. And that's pretty much all the major updates that we have with that project. I know I talked a lot about, said a lot of words, so I'm happy to answer any questions if anybody have any.
Thanks, Jonathan. I just wanted to add a little bit. So where we're at right now is we're meeting with residents along Poplar Street to get any comments and feedback they have, specifically about their frontages and their properties. And we also will be just for so that you guys are aware, we're also going to have our project surveyor come out and mark the center line to assist with people being able to visualize exactly where the improvements will fall in relation to the pavement areas. So there'll be more. We'll be having a lot of meetings with folks out there, and we'll continue to provide updates as they become available.
Jonathan, thanks for that update that was very hard without a presentation, but it was, you made it easy to follow. Is there any comments from the committee members? Jonathan, just does that put us on track from our timeline wise? Like, are we on track with what you had, where we want to be? Or on schedule?
So we did kind of get pushed out a little bit initially. We were planning to start construction. It all went to plan beforehand. We were planning to start construction this year, kind of almost in this time of day if we were on track of that plan back then. But now we're kind of pushing back. We pushed back a little bit, and our estimated start date right now is probably in the beginning of next year, if not to spring of next year. So that's our intention at the moment. Again, we're kind of working through the design still based off of those conditions of approval that we received from the Planning Commission. So hopefully we can work through that as soon as we can and start working on this as fast as we possibly can.
And I'll just mention that I know that there was obviously a concern with the funding source, the grant funding on this project. So we begged the MTC to extend it one more year, and with all the outreach and community input that we received, so they were willing to do that for us. So it was not a guarantee, but they saw the benefit of the project and the amount of community involvement and input, and they did grant us that 1 year extension. So we're okay from that perspective.
Cool. I appreciate that. And just for all community members who are listening, at least they have a heads up on where we are. Is there anything else? Any other questions, comments? Okie doke. We can move on to the PC Bikeway North and crossing improvements. Is that Maz or Jonathan?
That'll be me. So we did send out a revised agenda, Chair White. I'm wondering if you are reading off the old one.
I probably am. Can you help me and tell me what I should be reading?
So we can send you. No worries. We can send you a quick one. So the title, just to be consistent with our capital improvement program, it's the East Side Parallel Trail North Segment 4. So I'll provide a PowerPoint update on that. And the big piece was we actually added an item for an update to the 22-23 fiscal year capital improvement program. So I will have a presentation on that as well after this one.
You see, that's why they only made me vice chairman, because I have not graduated and I am in training. So thank you, Maz. I appreciate that.
No problem. Give me 1 second. I'll get this presentation started. All right. Can everybody see? Wonderful. Thank you, everyone. I'm Maz Bezirgini for the folks watching this at home, city engineer with Half Moon Bay. Happy to be here tonight to present an update on our East Side Parallel Trail North Segment 4 update. I know that's a mouthful, but we've got a slide to show what we're talking about when we're talking about the Segment 4. So just to let you guys know, we are working on connectivity of our East Side Parallel Trail as part of our long-term improvements for the Class 1 facilities along the Highway 1 corridor. The segment that we're talking about here is this proposed segment from just south of the El Granada line at Medio to link up to this the southern connection, the existing trail segment that exists near Rocket Farms. And so that's the piece that we're talking about as part of this project. And then the wonderful thing about that is that the county just to the north of us has a proposed project that's actually out to bid currently that would take that east side and run it all the way up to El Granada Elementary School. So we're working closely with them on that. So some of the project details, you probably have seen this, but I'll just go over it again for folks. So we're looking at a 10-foot wide path from Roosevelt to Murata. terminating between the proposed county project on the north and the existing class 1 to the south. It's about a quarter of a mile of a distance of trail. So we have a lot of funding from different sources for this project. There's some City of Half Moon Bay funding, as well as funding from the Transit Authority, as well as the Metropolitan Transportation Commission. We originally had, the reason why this project has taken a little bit longer than anticipated was this project did change a little bit as far as the oversight requirements from Caltrans. Originally, we were going through an encroachment permit process, and that's generally for smaller projects, which originally they said that we were, but unfortunately they came back and said that there are certain elements of the project that kicks this into a different category. So it required us to go through a more robust peer process, which requires meetings with Caltrans and review of the project from multiple functional units. So there's a lot more coordination involved with that. So with that, we are working through that process. We're at the, we were able to accommodate the comments from Caltrans and address a lot of those. We are finalizing our bridge type selection for the one bridge that we do need for this project that crosses the water course. We finished with our CEQA and our environmental documents. So we're just working on the final design. We have some coordination items to accommodate the county's project to the north, to ensure that our project links up properly and appropriately with that one. And we're also looking at additional funding from the TA for this project. With the additional time and inflation and potential for rising costs with what's going on in the world, there is a potential for that estimate to increase. So we're looking at that and trying to address any potential funding gaps. That was it for the presentation, but I actually have slides on the design if you guys want to look at the design in a little more detail. Happy to run through this. So why don't I do that? If you guys get bored, let me know and I'll stop. So here's the alignment. This is on the north side. So this is where it would terminate. And it kind of matches up here to Medio. And then on the opposite side of the intersection is where the county's project is. It's an asphalt 10-foot pathway and it meanders around. What we tried to do was give it a buffer between the Highway 1 corridor with some landscaping, with the existing vegetation. But it also to avoid sensitive habitat where we can. We really want to try to minimize our footprint in any environmental sensitive habitat area, reduce the amount of any takings of willows. And so that also is a reason why the path meanders the way that it does. As we go through, this is one of the driveways to Rocket Farms. And this is where we're talking about our bridge structures. So we have these two small, these two small spans. These are more decks. They're not really considered as bridges, but this portion here where it goes over a larger drainage channel did trigger that requirement for the additional Caltrans review. So that's what we're working through right now. You can see here on the bottom section, this is kind of the profile as they go through, just kind of showing the elevation changes. Again, we're really trying to keep consistent with the existing topography, not deviate too much from that. One, to reduce costs, but also again to reduce the impact on the habitat surrounding the trail. And then here we get to the bottom end where it ties into an existing, we're going to do a refreshing of the crosswalk, but on the south side of that, it connects to the existing trail that goes down to the Frenchman's Creek neighborhood. And here's just kind of a little bit of a detail on the bridge structure itself. So before cast in place piers for the supports, 2 on each side, and it's a pretty standard prefabricated bridge structure that would go over the top of it. So this is what the type selection is going through. This requires Caltrans headquarters in Sacramento to take a look at it. So that's what took us a little bit longer than anticipated. And that's it. if there's any questions, or if there's any slides you want me to go back to, I'm happy to do so.
Thanks for that, Ma.
Yeah.
I think it's exciting that we're connecting the trail and starting to go all the way up there. Eric?
Yeah, I just wanted to double check. North of Miramar, there's currently no shoulder, and you're saying that in this plan, there will be a 10-foot, the shoulder will be kind of expanded, or there's going to be a 10-foot trail creating a shoulder, whether there currently is one correct?
That's so that's the northern section where there is no shoulder. Those are the areas where when you get close to that bridge in El Granada, correct, just north of Medio. So that's definitely a choke point. So the county project in that location will actually create a separate bridge that goes across that channel, and so it'll be. That'll be the continuation there. Where we are proposing to do the majority of our project is kind of in that swath of, I guess I would call it open space area, just unimproved areas. There's a lot of vegetation and growth. There's a lot of wetland indicators in some of the spots. So we're kind of snaking the continuation of the city-owned trail through those areas. So you're right. It wouldn't be on the shoulder itself. It would be actually separated from the pavement section of the highway itself.
Okay. Thanks.
Sure.
Did you say when the timing of the project is, Mas?
I don't think I did. We are, so as I mentioned, the county is finishing, is going through their bidding process right now. They should be receiving bids soon. We are hoping to actually start construction in the next 9 to 12 months. I think we're really close. Once we finalize our design package with Caltrans, we will start our process to get this out to bid as well. And I think all said and done, by the time we get with the contractor and everybody in place, I'm expecting to break ground hopefully by the end of this calendar year.
Did somebody have a comment in the chat?
Yes.
Yeah, that would be me. One of the slides seemed to indicate that the east side path goes south all the way to Main Street, and it does not. You have to cross Highway 1 to go over to the west side in order to use any bike path. So I just wanted to make sure that that was understood. I think it was like the second or third slide you showed.
Let me see.
There we go. Existing 10-foot wide class 1 path continues south to Main Street. No, it doesn't.
No, that's a misstatement. You're right.
Yeah.
It continues south to the Frenchman's Creek neighborhood.
Right, and then you have to cross over, and thank God there's a light there. But yeah, it's still hazardous every time you have to cross the highway.
Yeah.
And I live in one of those unfortunate neighborhoods that is blocked in without access to any paths. So anytime I go out, I have to go out on the shoulder of Highway 1 and take my chances if I want to cross over before I go, about 1.5 miles down to Frenchman's Creek, or go all the way to Frenchman's Creek and use the light. So that's usually what I do, but sometimes I find an opportunity to cross over. Anyway, I just wanted to make sure that statement is not, to catch that statement and make sure that it's understood. There is no bike path serving our neighborhood or the 2 neighborhoods to the north of us. We're blocked in. We either have to go the wrong way on the shoulder down to Strawflower Village light, the Main Street light, and that's incredibly dangerous. Or we have to go all the way north up to Frenchman's Creek and cross. And if you're a pedestrian, that's an incredibly unpleasant walk on the shoulder of Highway 1. So just making sure.
Thank you for that clarification, Janet. I really do appreciate that. We'll make sure to make that correction on our slides.
Thank you.
And I think when we get to the next presentation on the CIP, I'll go more in details about the other segments of the trail on this east side and I won't bog down this item, but yeah, we'll have more on that on the next item.
Okay, thanks a lot.
That would be my question too, but I will wait for your next presentation to say, what are we going to do about that?
Yeah.
Are there any other comments or feedback from members on this presentation? Oh, perfect. I did, Moz, find my updated that Sherry did send, but was bogged down in my email. The next item, which I guess is the FY 2022-23 Capital Improvement Program update.
Thank you.
I wanted to have that on the record that I found. I'm just kidding.
No worries. 1 second. I will.
Chairman comes back. He's going to just not, he's going to give me like a C- on this job.
I think it's a solid B at least.
Oh, thanks, Maz. I'm an A student generally, so this is hurting me. I'm kidding. Go ahead.
Thank you. Thank you again for having me tonight. So as part of our annual update to our capital improvement program, our CIP, this is kind of one of the first steps that we like to take. We have we start our thought process and start looking at our projects and where we are in the fiscal year. Obviously, there are projects, especially on the coast side, with environmental concerns and whatnot, does change the schedule every once in a while. So it's always a great time for us to restart our review of our capital improvement program. So we start generally in the early part of the year and start thinking about our updates. And so this is one of the first times that we're presenting to our committees throughout through Half Moon Bay. The Parks and Recreation Committee did get a quick update on some of the elements of the capital improvement program last night. They're going to get a little bit more on their next meeting, but this will be this will be the update for you guys as far as what we're looking at. And ultimately, my goal for tonight is to talk to you folks about our projects overall. I won't go through the details on every one of them, but if there's anything that we don't have on the list, or you think that it's important that we should incorporate or include, those are the kind of things we'd like to hear, especially as we talk about some of our programs and maybe not our projects as much. There will be opportunities for small improvements. So if there's any little, if there's things out there that we are not addressing, we're not seeing, that's what I'd like to hear from you folks tonight. All right, so just a little recap for folks that just a reminder. So what is it? What is the capital improvement program? So our CIP identifies current and future efforts for enhancing the quality of life through our various improvements and infrastructure, visitors and residents alike. And it provides three primary benefits. The facilities facilitates scheduling of these improvements, especially for projects that are done over multi-years. It does provide some organization on our capital program, and it ensures consistency with our general plan and adopted master plans, as well as our ability to apply for additional funding sources. So very important, all three of those things. So what are the projects versus the programs? So over the last few years, we've continued to develop our CIP, and we've split it into two distinct categories. We have projects, which are generally large one-time improvements. So for example, like our Highway 1 South project that we wrapped up a couple months back, that was a project. Whereas we have more routine maintenance improvements, such as street resurfacing and overlays, which would fall more into a program, where it's more of an annual and an ongoing improvement. And so for today, we're going to talk about, I'm going to go through a few of the projects and programs on the categories that are under the purview of this group, which is under the parks, the streets, and the trails. So right now, this is our projects. This is our summary of our projects. So this is what we anticipate to be active projects during the next fiscal year. I won't read them out, but we will go through. I have slides on a few of these that we can talk about. And if there's anything that I didn't go through and you have questions on, I'm happy to talk about it as well. So you can see we have a number of the items under the parks. On the street side, we've got our big project, the Highway 1 North Safety Project, as well as our Poplar Street project. And then on the trails, again, our segment 4, which we talked about recently. Then we've got a couple of other ones that I think are important for this group. So on Magnolia Park, I just wanted to mention, so there's been a robust public outreach effort with community groups, as well as our community development department. So for our efforts for this fiscal year, there's been a lot of talk long term over this swath of land just on the west side of Seymour on Highway 1. So there's a proposed project right now to look at implementing a community park with community gardens and other types of amenities. And for the purposes of this upcoming year, we're going to continue taking that information and public outreach and use that to work on the design and environmental of that project. And the limits of the project are actually a little bit larger. So can you guys see my cursor? Yeah, so it's not just this piece. The park actually it's actually more of an L shape. So it's kind of this piece here. And so it'll be seen whether we look at phasing this project or we do it all at once. But our first step would be to embark on the design and environmental. The next project I wanted to talk about is our Carter Park Improvements Project. So this project has been something we've been working on for the last couple of years. And what really facilitated this project becoming a reality was the award of a Prop 68 grant through the State Department of Parks and Recreation, which Assemblymember Berman really championed this project for us. So we received a $4.75 million grant from that. So that really did it. When the funding opens up, that really did make a change to our schedule. So we're currently out to bid right now, actually, on this project. The bids they were due today originally, but after some comments from the bidders, which we've had quite a number of folks interested in this project, which is always great, we decided to push it out a couple of weeks to address some of those concerns and questions that they had. We are looking at by summer at the latest to commence construction, ideally as soon as our contracts are signed and the contractors ready. April 15th is kind of the first start date. Environmentally, we have a window that we can go in there and start working, where we're not impacting birds and nesting birds and other species. So that's really the earliest we would be starting is April 15th. So that's some really exciting news, and happy to share that. So you'll be seeing a lot of work going on out there, and we'll continue to provide updates on construction as we go through that project. We're anticipating it to be about a nine-month construction window. Hopefully not more than 12, but that'll be something we'll continue to monitor as the construction moves forward. So we talked a little bit. So the Highway 1 North Safety Project, that's another big one that we've got coming down the line. So this project is the operational improvements from Main Street on the north side, and it goes all the way through on the north on Highway 1, and incorporates a new signalized intersection at the intersection of Highway 1 and Terrace. It also incorporates the extension of our frontage road and ties it to Grand on the west side. It also incorporates the addition of a Class 1 pathway on the east side from Main Street to Spindrift. So that's a really important segment as we try to complete our missing and discontinuous segments on the east side of Highway 1. This project, we are finalizing our design. We had a couple of new comments that came from Caltrans staff. So we're finalizing the last of that. We worked with our partners at the San Mateo County Transportation Authority. And actually we had a funding gap of about $4 million. And I'm happy to report that the TA in November of last year, I think we mentioned it, but I'll mention it again. In November of last year, they awarded the additional $4 million. So at this time, we are fully funded and we are, again, finalizing design and looking towards going out to bid in probably closer to the end of the year on this major project. The next one, wanted to just highlight, we've talked about this as well, the Main Street Safety Improvement Project. So this project will look at incorporating, building out our network of Class 3 bike lanes throughout the downtown corridor and Main Street. So this project takes us from the North Main Street, where the last project just terminated. It continues with the Class 2 redoes. We're going to redo the Class 2 bicycle lanes that are existing on the North Main Street segment to 92. And then south of 92 on Main Street, we will incorporate a Class 3 due to concerns with width of the pavement. We'll have a Class 3, and that'll tie us into the downtown corridor where it snakes through Mill Street and Johnston and ties into improvements on Corrales, which leads to the library. This project is, we're wrapping up this construction and our design, and we should be going out to bid on this one in the next few weeks. So this will be something that we'll be doing sooner than later. We had anticipated doing this project actually at the fall of last year. However, as folks may be aware, the PG&E had a pretty significant gas improvement project, and a lot of the work was done on the Johnston Street, where they would have ripped up a lot of our improvements. So we put our project on pause to allow that safety improvement to move forward, and now we're looking forward to getting this done. The nice thing also is that rather than having PG&E do a lot of the restoration work and slurry on the areas that they touched, we actually got a financial contribution from them to supplement our funds for the project. So we talked a little bit about the Poplar Street traffic calming and safety project. So again, I won't talk too much about it, but we're looking at again, a great milestone was achieved, which was receiving the coastal development permit approval. So again, we're finalizing our design, and right now our target is to finalize the design and get it to Caltrans for the funding approval by the end of this calendar year. We have another project that's come up. This is our coastal trail. We've been receiving a lot of complaints about the status of the coastal trail and its degradation. It's been taken. It obviously takes a lot of foot traffic and bike traffic and whatnot, and so it's definitely time to take to do some restorative improvements. So we have a project that we're proposing for this to include in this fiscal year, which would be to overlay the coastal trail from Poplar to Central. Ideally, we're looking at finalizing our budget, but this will be one of the items that we would be presenting to the council for inclusion in next year's budget. Realistically, we'd probably be finishing up the design. If it gets incorporated, we'll work on the design by the end of this calendar year and probably look at the next summer or the following fiscal year to do the construction. As you can see, we've got a lot of projects that are coming in at around the same time. So we may stagger it a little bit to try to minimize impacts on our residents and visitors, but we are going to come in and do our improvements as quickly as we can. We also have some certain windows, especially with the coastal trail. There's certain times of the year where, especially for asphalt overlays, temperature becomes an issue. So we have to also kind of work around the weather a little bit too with our coastal weather. But I hope that is, I know that that's something that the BPAC's mentioned quite a bit. So I hope that this does address a lot of the concerns that folks have had on the maintenance, on the status of the pavement surface itself. So that, those were highlights on the projects, and so I'll talk a little bit about the program summary. And we've taken a little bit of a different approach on the programs. I think in the past years we've tried to incorporate projects, more projects out of these programs, but we've realized that it does become difficult for the public and folks to understand what we're working on when it's kind of hidden within these programs. So the programs we've tailored it down a little bit. So if a project in the past, you may have seen things that it would be coming out of these programmatic categories, those like the coastal trail paving overlay, we've decided we're just moving them out of the programs. We're creating its own project sheet. So it's very clear to folks when they look at our document what we're proposing to do. And so what we've done on these programs, we've watered it down a little bit. These are more smaller and more programmatic improvements, not really these larger projects that we've seen in the past. So our Parks Master Plan Implementation Program, we're looking at a few things that we're emphasizing on the 22-23 fiscal year. We're looking at a master plan for Kehoe Park. We're going to be incorporating auto locks on our park restrooms. There's a need to enhance some of the restrooms at Smith Field based on comments from the community that we received. And we're also looking at other minor improvements and repairs to existing parks and facilities. So these are kind of the smaller areas of improvements that I was talking about. Now, for example, if out of the master plan for Kehoe Park, we probably would get a larger park improvement. So then at that point, once this master plan is complete, then you would see this migrate from a program category to a project category. Our neighborhood, so we have a neighborhood traffic and safety program that we've had on our capital improvement program for a number of years, for a couple of years now, and for a little while, it's been it's had a little bit of funding, and this really is to address traffic and safety concerns that has brought up from our residents on local streets. We've done some traffic studies, we've done some stop warrant analyses out of this program. And what we are proposing to do this year is actually to focus on an adoption of a local road safety plan. And why this is important is, so the local road safety plan is a new methodology for incentive for programming and identifying improvements in local roads within jurisdictions. And the reason why it's important is because this is becoming a document that will be required for certain grant applications and opportunities that are going to be coming up, especially with the potential infrastructure bills that have been floated around at the federal level. We definitely want to make sure that we are in a good position to apply for those grants for local roads. A lot of times in the past, a lot of these larger grant opportunities were tied more to collectors and arterials, highways, roads that were more that were used more heavily. Now, the federal government has understood that there is also a need for the local roads, and so it's nice that they're proposing to have programs out there for these. Specifically for these smaller roads that generally are off their radars. And so one thing we want to make sure we do is we're in a good place to receive those funds. So that'll be our focus. And this will have, this will have a public outreach component. We'll be coming back to this group to talk about this project as well. So this will not be the last time you guys hear about this. We'll be doing a lot of public outreach to make sure that we get folks that are that have concerns and comments, that they really have an opportunity to provide those to us as we develop this. Our pavement management and traffic safety program. This is for a while. We've kind of looked at the distinction of we have two kind of road projects, if you will. We have our more routine maintenance, some overlays, slurries, crack sealing, dig outs. Addressing some of the streets that are just needing more some attention to continue to keep the pavement's life and keep getting the benefit of the pavement without going through the full and expensive reconstruction. So that's what this program is going to be looking at doing. We're doing an update to our pavement management program that's required by the state. What that does is we come out, we do they do measurements and rate our streets. They look at the improvements that we've done over the last couple of years, and they give us a new rating. And that rating is very important towards receiving, again, a lot of grant funding sources. And so this program would be looking at doing crack sealing, slurry seals, and other types of minor road surfacing improvements to maintain its life. Any larger reconstruction improvements where it's beyond the life of the project, the street segment. So generally you're looking at 30 to 40 years for each street. After that, even with all the preventative maintenance that you do, it still would need, at some point, it still needs to be reconstructed. So those would be its own category. And we have certain streets out there, like, for example, I would say Belleville Boulevard is a great example of a street that really does need a reconstruction project. We have that as, I didn't go over it, but we do have that as one of the projects that are being proposed for inclusion, at least on the design side. So those won't be included in this program. This would be more of your basic restoration improvements. And we've created another program. This one is the Bicycle and Pedestrian Connectivity and Safety Program. So this, again, in the focus of what the programs are entailed to be now, this will be focused on minor repairs and maintenance, addressing safety concerns and connectivity. In the past, we've had to try to find funds in different funding sources as problem areas arise, which makes it difficult to be able to quickly address problems sometimes. And so what we're doing now is really providing this pot of money to be able to come out and do these spot repairs as they become problematic for the community, as issues arise. We could also, and in the case where maybe there's funding left over, we can also use it to supplement other projects, or even potentially use these funds as a match if a good grant opportunity comes along. We just, having that flexibility is really helpful, especially when we're trying to levy and try to get those grants from the local, state, and federal levels. And then aside from that, we're also looking at a trail maintenance program. So there's a couple of different areas that we're going to look at emphasizing. This is, again, a newer program. So one of the things we want to do is assessment of our priority areas. Some of our areas are more problematic and have more issues than others. And so we're going to do an assessment of that. We want to look at developing a long-term maintenance plan. I think ideally we'd like to have it closer than 10 years. But again, the idea would be that we would at 10 years, at least have a plan to address every segment of our network within that 10-year time frame. That's our ultimate goal. And we also wanted to mention that that we have another piece that's coming out of this program is a crack seal of the Naomi Patches Trail, which is from Wavecrest to Seymour. There's a relatively large crack, and we've crack sealed it in the past, and it's due for another crack seal. So we'll be taking care of that as well as part of this program. That's it as far as the presentation goes. I will take questions. I do have one in the chat right now from Janet. So will Highway 1 North be 2 lanes north of Terrace when this is completed? If so, I assume it will drop back to 1 at some point. And where would that be? That is correct. So very similar to what we have at our other intersections. The way that Caltrans standards are generally that you have 2 lanes when you have an intersection, when you come to a signalized intersection. And so that's the rationale for that widening. And then, so what will happen is it'll be widened from, so right now it starts to merge around Silver. So that merge will be removed. It will continue as 2 lanes past Terrace. Then north of Terrace, it starts to merge into 1 lane. And ultimately, at some point, Frenchman's Creek, if you're familiar with the area, you may point out Frenchman's Creek doesn't have 4 lanes. That is not a standard Caltrans intersection, and they don't like it. Obviously, it's very narrow. There is safety concerns there, and one thing I didn't have it on my presentation, but I will mention it, that we do have a project in the horizon. That's the segment 2 piece of that east side parallel trail north. We are looking at obtaining funding from different sources. There was some potential funding from the state through Jackie Spears' office. I'm trying to determine where that funding allocation and ultimately ended up, but we did get a promise of $1 million to start our environmental and design there. So that's going to be one of the projects that I'd like to start. We will look to start programming with design as design and environmental now that we have a little bit of funding. And that's going to be a little bit of a bigger project because it's going to require one of two things, either a widening of the existing bridge that goes over Frenchman's Creek that carries the Highway 1 traffic, or a separate bike ped bridge just to the east side over Frenchman's Creek to connect that corridor. Likely it'll be the latter because it'll be a lot more expensive for us to widen Caltrans's bridge. So I'm gonna recommend that they widen their bridge to address their concerns, and we take care of our bikes and peds. So, but that's something that we're continuing to have conversations with Caltrans on as we go through.
I think my primary concern in asking that question is what can be done to take care of the incredible backup that occurs at rush hour, that it becomes a dead standstill. And when that intersection at Terrace becomes signalized, I see that backing up all the way well past Maine and lousing up traffic way back towards Highway 92. What's being done to fix that?
Yeah, no, that's definitely a challenge. I mean, obviously, every time you incorporate a new intersection crossing a major highway, you're going to have slowdowns and interruptions. And what we've noticed from the traffic patterns is you are getting some of that already, even though it's uncontrolled, because as you folks know, those neighborhoods are a lot of that's one way in, one way out. That's really the only option you have is to cross through Highway 1. And so, from that perspective, we've looked at it. And if this was an area that was isolated, yes, we definitely have a lot of, there would be a lot of concerns with that backup of traffic caused by the signals. In this scenario, and from the studies that we've done and seen, because it's actually sandwiched within these other signalized intersections, it should not have as much of an impact on the overall operation of the highway. I know that's hard to believe for some folks because obviously we're going to be adding a new signal. So, but at the same time, I think it's an important improvement because the one thing that we don't have right now is a safe crossing through that area. And what this will do is, although it'll provide a little bit of a slowdown, it does provide that crossing movement from different neighborhoods. Janet, if you're talking, you're on mute.
Now. It's okay. I was communicating with my family. I apologize.
Oh, no worries.
I think that's interesting. I don't want to belabor it, but I'm sure you've studied it and everything, but I can't imagine on a weekend with that light that the backup is going to be all the way down to Kelly. I mean, it's already bad. Maybe I'm just venting, so I'll just be quiet.
No, you're absolutely right. And this is a huge concern because already we often have backups all the way down to Kelly. And once you toss another light in there, and this is one of the arguments that the people who were advocating against the stoplight there on Terrace and folks on Silver, we just think it's an extraordinarily bad idea. And now that it's a fait accompli, I don't see a whole lot of mitigation efforts for that traffic.
Well, if the highway's being widened and the merge is going to be pushed further out of town, wouldn't that be where the traffic backup would start further out of town then? I mean,
The traffic backup starts at Frenchman's Creek and goes well past Terrace and continues down to Maine.
Sure.
So anytime you're trying to go north during peak hours and, on the weekends, it's completely deadlocked, gridlocked, stopped in front of Terrace. And I don't see that this is going to improve the situation at all because it's gridlocked primarily because of the Frenchman's Creek light.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I feel it, from my commute from El Granada to, I mean, even just, the minor weekday commutes coming southbound, generally that Frenchman's Creek light is the one that does provide the backup going up to El Granada. I definitely understand the concerns. And again, if this was, if this was outside of this corridor of existing signals, it would be a lot more of a concern. But because it's within the existing network of signals, operationally, it shouldn't add much more to the delay. Because, and from the other perspective, I would say that you also, again, in the weekend traffic, the problem with that is just, there's just too many cars. It's just too many cars. And there's no way we're going to be able to add enough lanes to accommodate the amount of folks that come through on a nice weekend. So that's why a lot of our efforts in these projects is the bike connectivity piece, which is one of the big things that council really pushed to incorporate into this project was adding that high class 1 on the east side from Maine to Spindrift, and why they want to continue and pushing on funding opportunities for that segment on Frenchman's Creek. Because I think on the weekends, I think that generally is the fastest way for locals to get around is to use those trails and get on their bikes. And that's really what we want to promote is get people out of their cars. And because otherwise, the reality is we're never going to do, there's no overpass. There's no, there's never going to be a 4-lane highway 1 in this section. It's not going to happen. So, we have to do what we can to mitigate those, and hopefully, honestly, my biggest goal for Frenchman's Creek would be to do a roundabout. That would be fantastic. I think that would actually take care of a lot of the issues there. Yes, it would slow traffic down, but it would not stop anybody and actually does provide for better movement through.
I think as importantly as the conversation is that we all just get tired of getting backed up is what's going to happen in an emergency. That is really, I hope that we have that the design incorporates a wider shoulder so that it could be used as a 2-lane, because if you have a tsunami, an earthquake, there's only a few ways out of here. And while I'm in shape on my bike, and I'm sure electric bikes last a while, I can't carry all my 3 dogs and cat and stuff. I'm making it funny, but it's not funny. It will be a challenge for all of us to get out of here. So I think to your point, Maz, hey, what can we do about it? I don't know what we can do about it, but safety concern definitely is and that part of town is in a tsunami all underwater. This part where I live up here near Central is high enough that you start to do that. But when you start to think of what can happen in these situations, you start to ask. So we're clearly not going to resolve it, but maybe our job is just to talk about it and make sure we're thinking about it.
I can provide a little bit of input on that. So I know that I've been involved in a few meetings with our folks here. San Mateo County Office of Emergency Services has been doing an update on their disaster response plan, and a lot of it has to do with evacuation plans. And so they have a new platform that they're utilizing, which is it's called Zone Haven. You'll probably hear more about it as it becomes more widely used. It's still in its infancy, but some of the conversations that have been had are, which events would trigger what, and what are the evacuation routes that should be in place. And so I agree with you. If everybody's trying to go through one corridor, it's going to be tough. But what will be really important is, depending on what event it is and where it is, being able to provide that real-time notice to the residents and telling them which way to go, because we obviously don't want to send people towards harm. And so it's definitely a concern. And when we talk about capacity components, that's always the part of it too, is the emergency response piece. So I just want to let you guys know that there is that additional piece that's kind of happening in a different format, as separate from our project. Although our project does get reviewed by Caltrans, Cal Fire. We work with our fire marshals, so our project plans do get reviewed by them as well. But yeah, so just wanted to point. I know it's a little bit out of our topic, but it is important, and I just wanted to share that there is a little bit more going on behind the scenes.
I appreciate that. I think that you have some exciting projects. I didn't realize that there was going to be a park, I guess, on Seymour. I think that would be really cool. I think Carter Park, even though, it relates to us because you could ride a bike there, that's pretty exciting to have a mini amphitheater type program where you could have a band and things like that. So I think we, while our job, I think, is to sometimes guide and tend to point out suggestions and maybe problems, that there are some really exciting things we're doing here in Half Moon Bay that, for a small town is pretty stinking cool.
Thank you. Oh, I think I missed another comment, a question from Janet. Notification of the community as far as how these programmatic funds are being available for these minor fixes. So we do get complaints from folks, calls in about areas of concern. We have on our website, we do have a traffic inquiry item that folks can do. You can send emails to me directly, as well as anybody on the engineering side or the public works side for that matter. And if there's anything, if you guys have anything on your mind right now, I'm all ears. We'll take note of it at this meeting and incorporate it into our budgeting process.
Okay, thank you.
We will be doing. So I will also mention. So there's going to be a council priority session coming up on. When is that? Sherry, do you recall when that is? 22nd. The 22nd of March is going to be our next. Is going to be our the listening session for City Council. So they're going to be talking about the different priorities. They're going to be hearing from the community. So that's a great opportunity for folks to voice their concerns. But as well as the CIP, they will be we will be taking it to the Planning Commission. We're going to be taking it back to the City Council. So, again, as we work to update our capital improvement program over the next couple of months, any comments or questions or ideas, send them our way, and we'll either add it, where we can to the current year, or at least program it in for future years and document it that it's there.
Perfect. Maz, thanks you had a very long job there. So thank you for doing that. Do we have any staff?
Thank you guys for listening.
Do we have any other staff or member announcements? Sherry, Maz, Jonathan?
From the announcement side, I do have a couple. Let's see. So I just wanted to update on the Caltrans trail near the Ritz-Carlton. Jonathan Wu was able to put in a request, and I believe that repair was made by Caltrans. So thank you, Jonathan, for chasing that one down. I think that was that was a comment that we received from this group at the last meeting, I believe.
Can I comment on that?
Absolutely.
So, they did not. What they did was they didn't fix it.
Okay.
So I will, and I was inclined to do this, but I wrecked on my bike in Pescadero recently, so I'm tending to keep my hands on the wheel while I'm riding, but I will stop and take a video. What they did was they added a little patch of asphalt into a few cracks. The issue is that needs to be grinded down and repaved. And I know it's not in our town limits, and I'm really grateful. I'm the one who said it. I think there's some other people who ride their bike south of town here can attest to that. You almost can't ride on the shoulder there. I mean, I have to take that lane, and usually cars are generally nice about it. But they need to grind that out. So maybe I'll take video and I can come down over to the office. People are back in the city office now?
We are. We're not. We should be open to the public soon. We're not open to the public yet, but yeah, just message us. I mean, I'm usually in the office, and I'm happy to meet with you here.
And then I can just show you the video. So I want to say thank you for at least bringing it up, but they did not fix it. I think they can do better.
Okay. Yeah, there's probably their maintenance approach was the quick and easy one. Generally, I think they wanted to be responsive, but probably did not have the programming in place to fund the proper repair. We do have, again, so I'll just mention this. The other announcement I was going to make was, the Caltrans multi-asset project that I talked about briefly. I gave that presentation from Caltrans. That's the improvement project that they're doing from Wavecrest to Moss Beach, incorporating bicycle and pedestrian accommodations. It's a pretty large stretch. They're also talking about repaving Highway 1 along the entire corridor. It's still a couple of years out. But originally I was trying to get them to come to this meeting to do a presentation and give an update to this group. But they weren't quite ready yet. They didn't really have much to update us on yet from the last presentation that I shared. But I have a meeting with them at the end of the month. I will bring up this area of concern, even though it's south of the project, but that's the group that would be able to take care of the bigger concern. And I also want to mention that right now we're trying to get them to come on the May meeting to present to you guys, so you can get a full picture of what their project proposal is. And at that point, I'm assuming they're going to have a lot more detail than what they've shared with us to date. So fingers crossed, but that should be a good update from them at the next meeting. I think that's all I had.
Thank you for that. Are there any other last comments from fellow committee members on anything? Everyone's hungry or tired. Our next meeting will be on May 5th of this year. And then after that will be May 7th. I want to thank Jonathan for your excellent presentations, Maz for yours, and Sherry for keeping us all straight and doing all your hard work. We're really grateful for everything that you do, and everyone else for showing up tonight and tolerating my B-level job that I will aspire to do better as time goes on. But thanks a lot. Do we have a motion to adjourn? Someone?
So moved.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Adjourn. Thanks, everyone. Really appreciate everyone's time.
Great to see you all.
Bye-bye.
See you soon.
Thanks.
Bye.
Bye.